Hello, hello. Welcome to the channel. There is a couple myths that I would like to address because I feel like we are in this energy collectively right now. Now that we are in October, we are moving towards a full moon in Aries. We are moving towards the 1010 portal, which in my experience always tends to be one of the biggest ones. It's like October, November, December. Boom, boom, boom. We're heading into eclipse season. So there is just a lot of energy supporting that kick in the pants growth. And there are a couple myths and stories, programming stories that I see people getting stuck in on these twin flame journeys. Okay. Whatever your interpretation of the twin flame journey is. So if this resonates and if it fits, fantastic. But I see this a lot in client sessions, a couple of these things that I want to address. So the first one that I want to address is, if you are not in union and you're the runner or the unawakened twin, the masculine twin, whatever you want to call it, whatever label you prescribe to, has not gotten their lives together, has not contacted you, has not reached out, or you know what they're up to in their 3D lives and it's a mess. They're with karmics, they have, just chaos and turmoil and darkness and all this stuff going on around them. That is not the mirror reflection of you every single time. It is not. And I know a lot of teachers teach that. They kind of teach it in a very black and white, simplistic way that if you're not in union, it's because of you. There's something you're doing. Now, there is a myth that I will go into later that will encourage the divine feminine or the more awakened twin who's aware of the journey to take responsibility for what's going on in their connection. But I want to address those that have done the work, have done massive amounts of transmuting, healing, alchemy, have cleaned up their lives, their karmic situations. They have exited the matrix. They have done all the things that they possibly could do. And most importantly, less about what they've done, more about what they've cultivated within. So if you find yourself feeling this sense of peace, this sense of balance, wholeness, harmony, a sense where your inner masculine and your inner feminines within yourself work together in tandem, kind of feels like divine parenting within. Like you have an inner father masculine energy that's protective and gives you structure and boundaries and helps you stay rooted to the earth and kind of, keeping yourself in order. And then you have a feminine that allows you to hear the messages and the intuition and the guidance and to be playful and enjoy and let loose and a little wild sometimes. And they're kind of in balance and they work with each other, the nurturing, loving, and the, structure and protection. And when you feel that kind of working in tandem really beautifully within you, and only you can be in complete 100% accountability and knowing of where you're at. And this is part of the journey. Obviously, when you get into a session with somebody, if this is what they specialize in, they may be able to guide you and help you and see things that you can't see. But really, it's about you being in honesty of where you're at. The journey is not linear. It is ever flowing. So you go deep, you think you've healed that, you think it's complete, you think it's done, and then you find out 6 months later, oh, there was a little bit left, more to go. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're failing the journey. It means you did what you were guided and what was in the divine timing at that time to do, what you were capable of and available to do at that time. And now you're ready for more. That's it. It is not good or bad. It's just the journey. It's just the uniqueness of the journey. So back to this myth that if you are not in union, that it is most likely your fault if you are the awakened twin and that you're doing something. I have met countless divine feminines where this is not the case, where there is a divine perfected timing that is not always accessible to us as the humans, right? It's not always accessible to us to understand why it's working this way. But if you can be in ownership and a couple of the things that I like to say, or I like to check, are you on mission? Are you working in service, right? Are you absolutely head over heels, madly in love with yourself? Have you cultivated balance and peace? Do you have anyone in your life that is kind of toxic or not good for you, or any situation in your life. This could literally be a home. This could be a job. This could be a responsibility, some task on your list, something that is actually draining you and not giving to you an equal give and take. So if you can say that you're good on all of those things and those are all applicable, and yet your union has still not happened, then it's a couple of things, and spirit will usually, if you're listening, do a good job of trying to communicate to you what it is. But a lot of the times it's you've kind of taken the baton, you've done your work, you healed, you pulled your energy back, you finalized any running, chasing dynamic or leaking of your energy, not just with your twin, but with anything in your life that was toxic or karmic. You've pulled it all back. So now you've passed on the baton to your counter soul. It's up to them to go do their work. Now, how long it takes them to do that is not up to you. You have no control over that. And you have no control over the 3D human that has free will choice. So a lot of people say, you know, if you do it, then they absolutely have to do it. But there's many factors. There's these two individuals also have 3D karma that isn't shared. Sometimes one person's karma takes longer to wrap up. Sometimes it takes somebody a different process in terms of being ready to actually do the alchemy, to having a body or an environment or a safety in doing that healing. So for example, let's say a divine masculine awakens and their divine feminine is kind of healed and like passing the baton off, and then they go off and do their own thing. And now this masculine, you know, is working with their guides, whether they call them that or not, whether they know it or not. They're being prepared to go through an alchemical transmutative process. However, it has to be safe. It has to be lined up. Karma has to be healed. They have to have a safe environment to do that. All of the pieces kind of have to align. It also has to be for the highest good of all. So there's a timing here. There's a timing in what occurs. So it could take this masculine time to be ready to actually do that. Does that mean that that feminine over there has done something wrong and that it's her fault that things haven't come through? Absolutely not. And it's no wonder why we have this, because we do have this sort of culture, unfortunately, that does target, blame, shame the feminine. It's just a natural thing that we have. We just have it, right? And so we all carry pieces of that within ourselves, and we're all working to balance and heal and let go of that. But we do it to our own inner feminine. So of course we're going to do it to the outer. So it makes complete sense to me why that teaching kind of gets presented, that you know, it's all on you. You have to fix it. Now, I promise you, if some of you are confused, I will be addressing that aspect where the feminine does need to take responsibility, and there is something that they're missing. So I will get to that in just a moment. But I want to make sure that I've completed this this transmission here, that there are many factors. Oftentimes the masculine is waiting for the feminine to get an experience that she needs to have. Perhaps she has been in a marriage for however many years, and this is the first time she's been single in a long time. And while she's gone through her healing and her transmutation, and she's very balanced and whole and available and able to welcome in a very divine, high level, high love partnership, it may be about the divine highest timeline where she gets alone time, where she gets to be in that energy. Or, you know, I see for a lot of feminines, they have these great missions and service work that they need to do. And sometimes it's for the highest good that the divine's like, I want you to establish that. I want you to work on that. I want you to do that on your own for a while in the 3D. You're always doing things together in the higher realms. Everything, like literally everything that you do, every decision you make is always being done in tandem. And that's just the truth of these connections. But I'm kind of more addressing the 3D concerns and worries, because that's what I see being the block most of the time in a client session. That's the thing that we ruminate on and we can't let go because it doesn't logically make sense. And so that's kind of where these myths are connected to, is the 3D. So there's many different factors. It could be this, it could be vice versa for the masculine. You know, maybe the masculine has been in a very toxic relationship and really needs that alone time. They have the intention, they have the knowing, and they want to do it, but you know, and then it's also like what they need to go through. And some of these lessons take longer, and it depends on the individual, the human individual, how quickly they're going to integrate and transmute and do these things. And for many masculines, there's a great fear. There's a great fear in being wrong. There's a great fear in being vulnerable and sharing their emotions and, you know, coming back later and saying, I said this, but I regret it and I'm sorry and I was wrong. And here's how I really feel. The falling on the sword. That's a really difficult thing for masculine energy. And there's no wonder when you look at our world, right? So there's many, many factors. And that's what I see a lot, actually, is a lot of feminines that have kind of done their work and healed. And there is this, you know, when you tune into that other energy, that energy is really working on their confidence. They're working on activating their throat chakra. And these are things that they're very important before this person is able to actually offer and give in a whole, balanced, equal give and take sort of 3D commitment relationship. So even if feminine is ready, it doesn't always mean that masculine is ready like that. That's not how it works. Okay, so that's one myth. The other myth that I've kind of hinted at a couple times is, well, I guess it's not necessarily a myth, but it's a lot of feminines who are like, I've done my work, I'm done, I've healed. And now this person is just, they've chosen off the journey. It's basically, it's kind of the shadow of the first one, where you think that you've achieved the balance, the wholeness, the peace, and yet you are still doing to get. So a lot of the actions that you might take, and again, this is a sneaky one. This is very deceptive because a lot of times it's in the subconscious. You're not aware of your motivations, but it's kind of like, I'll give you a very like, you know, blatant example. It's like, I'm going to move here. I'm going to move away. And I'm actually not moving away because it's in my highest guidance and my highest timeline. And this is like what spirit's guiding me to do. But I'm going to go move over here because I want to get their attention. I want them to feel like they lost me. And that could be very sneakily subconscious, right? But it's still doing something to get. So you are still in runner chaser. You are still hooked in. You are still attached to that timeline. Therefore, this person has not been set free. You have not fully mourned and let go of this person because, you know, ego death, there is a reason death is in the name. This all has to die. That old relationship that you had with this person, the old version of this person, that old version of self, all of that has to die. The old version of you that was interacting with them, that has to die. It all has to die because we're purging and purifying the not self, the aspects and parts of ourself that were never true, that were never ours to begin with. We have to let it all die. This is a very painful process. This is why a lot of us throw our hands up and say, I'm done, get me off this journey. I don't want to do it anymore. And it's very easy to project that onto the other person and say it's the other person's fault. But it is actually a strong ego attachment within ourselves that is kind of holding up the stop sign and saying, I can't do this. Stop it. This is too hard. I don't want to do this. But really, on the other side of that process is that freedom. It is the release. And yes, you're going to go through many iterations of ego deaths, but they keep coming, right? They keep coming until they're really fully purged. And there was a video that I shared recently about transmutation. And once you've kind of healed and balanced your own karma, you then start to do it for the collective, do it for the twin, and do it for others. And you can feel the difference in when you're doing it for somebody else and when it's your own. And I kind of go into that in that video. Once you get to that place, you know you've kind of done your own. You know that you've gotten past all of those ego deaths that are around you. And it's not to say that you won't ever have them again, but you are at this place within this journey. If we were looking at it from a human linear perspective, you are at this place within this journey where you have taken ownership and responsibility. And it's actually now about shifting and letting go of the self-perfection and the self-shaming and any of that. You're actually on the other end. Whereas who I'm addressing here, this myth or whatever you want to call it, is somebody who's a little bit in spiritual bypass, is somebody who is not wanting to go fully there. And so you're still probably triggered in the 3D. And this could be very silly little things, you know, it doesn't even have to be something that happened in the 3D. You could all of a sudden get a thought or a fear like, oh my God, this will never happen. I'm delusional. Or, you know, just fears, just little fears. They float in. Who knows where they come from? Sometimes they come from you. Sometimes they come from the collective, but they just kind of float in. And if that rattles you, if you have that moment, first off, that's an alchemical process. So allow yourself to be rattled because that's how it's going to leave your body. But if that rattles you and then you immediately go into Anya and go into the mind and you go into like kind of trying to solve it, trying to fix it, and you might reach out to a tarot reader and you want to get a tarot reading, or you might reach out to somebody and be like, I need help, or you might want to, you know, get really upset. You find yourself in all this anger and projection on the twin and blame. That's probably a sign that you are not as far along on that journey as you think you are. And this is where a lot of the deception comes in that can really, really limit these journeys and hold them back and keep you in a place of stuck energy. Because if you're not taking responsibility or accountability and you're putting it all on them, the thing is, they're going to be doing that in their life. So if there is some form of a deception still present within your interactions with one another, so if you are somebody that does still interact with them in the 3D and there is deception, then that's a really good indicator that there's something within you that you are not fully taking ownership of, that you're projecting and putting off onto this other person. And it gets sneaky because you get really good at not doing that in your life, but obviously the twin is the most difficult thing. So that's the one that you do tend to still do it with because it's so hard to not, right? So it's kind of this little test, and only you'll be able to, you might be able to do this with support of a coach or in a session, but only you'll be able to really, really get honest with yourself. Like, am I still doing that? Is there still something that I'm kind of running from within myself? And the thing is this actually enables the twin, the runner twin, whatever you want to call it, to keep being in their lies and their deception and their masks in their life. When you get really real and honest and you face that darkness and shadow, and on top of it, you are detached from them. And I honestly see this as needing to be a separation. I haven't been proven wrong on this yet. And I'm open to being wrong, that there are twins that don't need to go through a deep separation, but I see it time and time again in sessions where I work with somebody for a very long time. And it finally comes to this point where it's like, no, we actually have to be in separation. And that's the last little piece that we've been holding on to. It was the divine timing the whole time because we were working together and it needed to go the way that it went. But there is this period where it does need that release, because that is when it's kind of like I've started to see this journey, if we just want to be super simple, in like boy to man, like girl to woman, like really truly. And so there is this like umbilical cord, which might be kind of gross, like, but that's just the way spirit's been showing it to me. That's almost a connection that I see between a lot of divine masculines and divine feminines, where the feminine is giving a lot of nutrients, a lot of food, a lot of energy, whether you're even in communication or not. If you still have that energetic sort of attachment that I've been trying to describe here, if you still have that in any way, they're able to kind of hide behind your light. They don't have to face their shadow. And it's why this journey gets so confusing. You're like, how could they still be with this karmic person? How could they still be behaving this way? How could they still be doing this? And it doesn't make any logical sense to you. But it's because it's a deeper energetic. It's all energetics. These connections, more than anything, teach us that everything is energy, everything. And these connections, more than any, you can't fake it. And you can't fool your higher self. You can't fool the soul. You can't fool the energy. It is the truest form. It's true. And so that's why it's confusing when you can read this person and you know how they really feel, and yet on the surface, they're saying something differently. That's a mind fuck. It very much so is. But the thing is it's up to you now to take responsibility and unravel where you've been mind fucking yourself, where there is some form of that within you. Okay. And so this gets really tricky. I'm very aware that this is a tricky one to unravel. And this is kind of, if you get to this point and you have like a hint that there might be something still there that's not working itself out, or you're seeing a lot of deception on their end, that's when getting that kind of neutral, extra perspective to be able to see the energetics that can kind of go in and see like, okay, what could be going on here? Because that is something that I see that hinders it. Another myth is that twins don't ever come together, and that it's this doom and gloom, like it's not even possible. You just teach each other a lesson and then you go off on your separate ways. And what I've found, the energetics of this, if you go deep into this and where this comes from, this is the deep fear. This is the fear of success. This is the fear of failure. It's a lot easier to say something is impossible than it is to say this is going to happen and have complete devotion and faith to it. and then to be proven wrong. Because as humans, we all are afraid of looking bad, looking stupid, being wrong. So if you've committed to something, you know, it's kind of like going into a job interview and you might really want it, but you might tell people like, you don't really care, it's fine, you're just kind of trying it out. That lets you off the hook, right? It's a very brave, confident, strong human to be able to say like, I want this and I'm going for it. And then if they don't get it, to very honestly, vulnerably say, yeah, I didn't get it. And you know what? I'm pretty upset about it. That takes a lot more courage than the other. And so I find that this myth comes from twins who were on these paths and then abandoned the path because it felt too hard and difficult. And they kind of got to that place where they just couldn't. And, you know, spirit works with you when you make these kind of choices and decisions. I do believe this collective of twin flames that I've been working with and addressing here don't really get that free will choice to choose off, but I believe previous cycles of twins probably did, because Earth wasn't ready to hold the vibration and the frequency, so it was a lot more challenging for them. That's kind of the way I've started to see it. But now, since we've been in this this new phase, this new epoch, this new evolution, this awakening, it's kind of like you have a choice, but at the same time, not really. And that's another transmission for another day. So I can go into that I have actually in the past. And so you could, anyways, I've done a video on that before. So I won't go into that here. But this believing that it probably maybe won't happen, or that it can't happen, or that it feels impossible. This is just a story, a wound, an insecurity that is asking for attention. It's asking for you to see it, to own it, to feel it. And that is back to this transmutation. When there are parts of ourselves that we won't look at, that we won't see, it's when we get dis-ease. It's when we get issues within ourselves. It's when we start acting out of alignment, where our motivations are not aligned and we're doing things that we don't quite even understand why we're doing it. So really being self-actualized means knowing thyself. You know all aspects of you. You know thyself. You know the shadow. You know the darkness. You're not fractalized. There's not pieces of you locked in boxes somewhere. And to be quite frank, this is the wound that we see in society. And this is why twin flames are so critical and so important, because there's the masculine wounds, there's the feminine wounds, and then they're hurting each other. They're actually fighting one another out of their wounding and their pain. And then they're proving, so whatever dark stories that they have about the other, and that it's not safe to love and it's not safe to be vulnerable, they're reaffirming the wounded versions of themselves are out in the world, reaffirming that to one another, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So the masculines and the feminines, the divines, are here to heal that, to transcend that, to transmute that, to give an example. So why do you think we wouldn't be meant to come together if that is our mission and that is our goal? It's only through, people that are so entrenched in the third dimension, they're not going to be able to, they're not going to get on board with the higher dimension. Oh, you learned this and you did your work and whatever. That's kind of like an isolated healing event. And we're kind of past that. We're now in this phase of service, of giving back, of leadership, of being the light, being the example, paving the way. So just for your logical brains for a moment, does that make sense to have twins come in, heal themselves, and then go on their merry way? How does that necessarily help the collective? What I can foresee happening, which I'm sure has already happened in your life, people might look at you and they'll be like, she's different, he's different, they've changed, what's going on with them? That's weird. Oh, but they somehow did it. They're into that weird spiritual stuff. Like, I could never do that. It wouldn't empower them. It wouldn't make them feel like, oh yeah, I can do this. Like, let me follow in those footsteps. It's kind of like you're an outlier, and it's like, well, good for them, but I'm going to stay here in my darkness and misery. Right. And you probably already see that happening, where people, friends, family, whatever, look at you like, well, I don't know how she did that, but I don't think that's that plausible. I don't get how, especially if they have any awareness and understanding of you and this connection, and that, because that's actually one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves, is when we heal and when we grow and evolve, we're going to be alone. That's such a myth. That's so connected to the inverted world. If I am my true high vibrational self, and this is something we were all told as a child in one way or another, probably not literally, but we are modeled and shown that we have to dim and hide parts of ourselves because it's not safe to be our true authentic self. we won't be accepted, we'll be rejected. That's what the world teaches. And so, you know, a lot of us maybe see you as an example in your community being this high vibe person and shifting and changing and going through all this, but then they're like, yeah, but they're alone, or, you know, they're in this weird thing or whatever, you know, all the 3D kind of projections that people will throw. The divine has, I mean, that's great and all the individual healing, but it's all about the highest good for all, truly, right? So that myth is really just a salve. It's really just an ego soother. That's what it feels like. It feels like a little blankie for the ego. And it's a really dangerous one, because when that's in your operating system, it is keeping you entrapped. And there's also this thing that I've touched on many, many times of divine neutrality and acceptance and surrender, where no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. And so it's kind of this holding both polarities, like, of course, I will end up with my twin and it will be better than I could ever imagine. And also, if I don't, I know I'm going to end up with the partner that I'm absolutely meant to be with, right? So it's not making one wrong and one right. It's holding the all. It's holding all. Especially for feminines, I think that's really important for feminines, because I think that feminines can be very focused on, and you even just see this outside of the twin connection, like feminines have a stronger, it seems, stronger tendency to attach to people. And masculines, that it's the same energetics, it's the same fear at the root, but the way that it usually manifests in a masculine is like, I'm not going to attach to anyone. Let me just value my freedom, and I don't want to get close because I'll get hurt. And feminines, you know, it's the runner chaser. The chaser attaches really strongly, and they feel that's going to be the thing that protects them. The fear is the same for both masculine and feminine. It's the literal same fear. It's just manifested in different ways. So it's usually something that the masculine on their journey, they have to embrace devotion. They have to embrace, like, holy shit, this is the only person for me. Wow, holy cow, right? They have to go through that, which is a very masculine boy to man journey, right? It's a shamanic journey. That's, you know, our ancestors were much more wise with these sort of things and how we guided boys into men, and devotion and all of that was a huge aspect of it, because, you know, the feminine, anyways, the way that it works is the masculine is designed to devote themselves to purpose, to mission, right? Feminine actually needs to go on the other journey, where it's kind of detaching from that and holding the all and being in the state of surrender and surprise and allowing, right? Allowing and trusting the divine, trusting their higher self, trusting that they're going to be shown, right? So they're a little bit different in the energetics, and that's what's so interesting in polarity and when we have these conversations. But okay, let me just see if there's any other myths that I want to address here in this video. And there are other myths for sure, or things that you hear taught and spoken about a lot that can be kind of dangerous, or I don't know if dangerous is the right word, but it can just hurt you. One of the last things, it's not necessarily a myth, but one of the last things I see time and time again is, if you are the feminine and you are identified as the feminine, and that doesn't mean gender, we've gone into it a million times, I don't need to go into it here. There is a necessary initiation that has to occur in order for your confidence to come online. And it also, I see it very oftentimes, not in all situations, but very often it is the activator that allows you to detach from the relationship, where you move away from the relationship and the relationship is no longer what it's about. It's like, I can't even believe I thought this was about a relationship in the beginning, and it's mission. And mission does not have to look the same for everyone. However, I will say, in this particular space and time that we are in, the twin flames that I see, that I work with, that I've been working with for over 2 years now, that, you know, hundreds of people that I've come and seen, and divine feminine specifically, your guides are always moving you to be seen, to be out in the open, to be vocal, to be activated in your throat chakra, and to be in service. And how you do that is less important. It's like, it's all about being this divine beacon of light. And this is something about this epoch that we're in with the divine feminine rising. This maybe in the past would have been more of a masculine, role. But this is what I've seen that's unique about these twin flames is it's a feminine role, where until you come to that place where you are vocal, public, seen, authentically yourself, vulnerable, sharing in a very big way, pieces of the journey don't activate. And on the other end, the masculine may not activate in their lives. They may not work on the self-actualization. They may stay kind of in slumber for a while. And this seems to be something that I can't not see this. And again, it's one of those that I'm very open to being wrong. I think the more work you do, the more you acknowledge, the less you really know or understand. And so you're very open to like learning a new way. But spirits confirmed this for me multiple times, but my human almost is still dubious. My human is still kind of like scientific in it, where I'm like waiting to find the exception. But it doesn't mean that everybody has to be a coach, that everybody has to be a healer or a tarot reader. It doesn't mean that by any means. But there is something about, like, if it's, let's say you're a mom and you're really passionate about holistic parenting and, or even just like feeding your children healthy food, it's like, teach it. Write an ebook, get a YouTube channel. It's literally, I've been shown that it's that. It's not what you do, because I've had people that are already doing a spiritual business, but they're just not vocal. They're not sharing publicly. They're not really out there speaking their truth. Or if they are, they lead a double life. They're like, here's my professional life. And then over here, I'm this spiritual, like divine feminine working a twin flame path, but I don't tell anybody. And spirit's like, no, it's holistic. It's union. It's one. You have to be all. And masculine has to get to that place as well, but kind of in a different way. It seems like their activation with that comes from feminine, meaning they go off her lead a little bit. And so I think that cracks on in a different way, which we'll learn more about as we go. But so anyways, feminines, it's really about that. It's because it's embracing your voice. It's embracing your truth. It's being, I am unapologetically myself. And the feminine has been shamed and shut down and caged and crucified and killed and all that for so long. And that's part of this initiation. It's part of this ritual, is we're saying we're not afraid anymore. And we won't be silenced. And so I think that's a big aspect of it. Okay. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear if there's any myths or things like that you think I may have missed, and how these resonate and how these feel. This is something that just kind of was like very clear. Let's talk about this, because it's just something I've been seeing, a theme, if you will, in these sessions lately. And a reminder that you're not alone. You're not alone on this journey. This is, I always say, it's like the Olympics of spiritual healing. Like, it's the most advanced. And I don't say that with any ego. I say that with like, to validate those of you that are like, I have friends that are on spiritual paths, but I don't think we're doing the same thing. It's just to validate you. You're right, you're not. But at the same time, for you, it's almost easier, because for them, they have to seek the practices, the teachers, the things they have to find. And that's probably part of the thing their soul wanted, is their soul wanted them to be able to go on that part. But for you, it shows up at your front door one day and won't go away. It's that guest that won't leave. It's that guest that you didn't invite and won't give you a time when they're leaving. And they're pretty pushy. That's your journey. You got to address it. You got to feed them. You got to keep them safe. You got to deal with them. Right. So yeah, lots of love, lots of strength.